One of the biggest issues I find is trying to manage a long list of projects or big things to do in some kind of digital tool. Now, a few years ago, Todoist introduced something they called boards. Now, at first, because I'm not particularly a visual person, I like to see my lists as regular lists. I wasn't too sure how to use these. But then one day, as I was walking my beloved Louis, it hit me and I realized that boards are a fantastic tool to help to reduce the overwhelm of the stuff we think we have to do. Now, I know in my case, and I know in the case of many of the managers that I work with in my coaching program, they have a pretty good idea of what needs to be accomplished in the year. Many companies have an annual plan and they plan out what needs to be accomplished in that year, and they associate that with things like KPIs and performance reviews and various other things. But at an individual level, we need to find a way of being able to see the big picture of what's on our plate so that we can make good decisions about when we are going to do some of these projects, because perhaps the deadline is as long as it's done this year, but there are times when it needs to be done in Q1, Q2, Q3 or whatever. So using Todoist boards, you can actually find a way to be able to distribute your projects evenly throughout the year. And I'm going to show you how to do that with my Todoist right now. So first up, we need to create a board, and all you need to do is create a new project and choose the board layout. Now you have a number of options into what sections you create. Now I prefer personally to create quarters, so that's 4 sections if you like, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Now, you can do this monthly if you prefer, and in some businesses that might be the better option. But just keep in mind, if you are going to have like 12 months across the top, you are going to be scrolling along and you're unlikely, well, you're certainly not going to be able to see the big picture of what you've got to do unless you have a ginormous screen. But what you want to be doing is trying to keep this down into one screen so that you can actually see all 4 quarters. So you can see in this particular example, I can see Q1, Q2, Q3 and Q4. Now what you might have noticed in mine is that I've got Q1 2026, Q2 2026, and then Q3 2025, Q4 2025. Now there's a reason behind that. I want to see all 4 quarters that I'm working with. I'm not particularly interested in the past. The projects are done, they're complete. I don't need to worry about them anymore. This is really about future planning. Now, the great thing about moving, as soon as like Q3 finishes at the end of September, that will then change to Q3 2026. Now, the reason for that is that when you get to Q4, as you can see in my example here, I've got quite a few projects lining up in Q4, but I'm also aware that the last 2 weeks of the year are really dead to me because I generally don't do any projects in the last 2 weeks of the year. So rather than actually having 12 weeks of a quarter, I only have 10. So that's something that I want to be looking at and thinking, right, it's okay, it's not going to happen in Q4, I'm going to move it to Q1 2026. So I've always got options open to me to be moving projects around. Now, I know some of you will probably have deadlines and you're not able to move projects around. Although some of you, I'm sure, if you spoke to your boss, you could get a delay and push a project into another quarter. But what I'm doing here is I just put out the projects that I think I need to or want to do in any given 12-month period. Now, the thing with this is I need to be able to limit the number of projects. You see, if you end up putting like 20 projects in Q1 and 5 projects in Q2 and perhaps 3 projects in Q3, what you're going to find is that you just have a completely imbalanced quarter. You're not going to be able to do 15 projects in a quarter unless they're tiny projects. So it's unlikely. Now, what I do is I limit my projects to no more than 5 projects at any one time. Ideally, I would have 4 projects per quarter. So if you times that by 4, it means that I can do 16 projects a year. That's actually a lot of projects, because the way I define a project is they are big, juicy things. They're not little tiny things like clean up the kitchen or clear out my closet. You know, none of that would be a project. That's just an ongoing chores, activities that I would do. These are big, juicy projects. So in my ideal situation, I would have no more than 4, but I can push to 5 if I really need to. So as you can see with my Q4 2025, and this, by the way, happens every year, things get pushed and pushed and pushed until the end of the year. So you can see here, my mum's trip to Korea was originally scheduled for Q2, but then she changed her mind and she decided she was going to come in September. And then she pushed it off to October. Well, as soon as we get to October, we're now into Q4, so it's now gone into Q4. I have some recurring projects that come around, which is updating my Apple productivity course, and that always happens in Q3, and I know that this month and next month is a project that I need to be working on. I also have my ultimate productivity workshop restarting in September. That's another Q3 project, so that needs working on too. But that's it, that's all I have. Now keep in mind, I'm recording this round about the second week of August, so I'm already partially through Q3, and some of the projects that I have done have already been done in July, so this is why Q3 looks a lot lighter. Now, one thing I should point out is you don't just want to be putting your work projects on here, because there are going to be times when you're perhaps having a holiday, vacation for my American friends, and that probably could be like a week or 10 days, or if you're in Europe, it can be as much as 3 to 4 weeks holiday. So that needs to be taken account of. You need to be aware of that because it's cutting down the time you have available to work on projects. As I say, you don't have 12 weeks if you've got a 2-week vacation holiday. Instead, you've only got 10 weeks. That actually does materially change how many projects you're going to be able to get done in any quarter. Remember, it doesn't matter what you have to do if you haven't got the time to do it. It ain't going to get done, full stop. So you're going to be aware of things like vacations, holidays, and anything else that you may be going on in your personal life. Now you can see here with my Q4 areas here, full marathon is up there. It's actually probably looking more like it's going to be half marathon because I got a little bit of an injury last month. I'm fine now, but it meant that I wasn't able to put in the miles that I needed to do to be able to do a full marathon. But half marathon, I'll take that. And also my mum's trip to Korea, because that means we're going to be going out doing the touristy thing more often than I would. In fact, I don't do that on a day-to-day basis when I'm in my normal working life. So those things I need to be aware of because it's going to cut down the amount of time that I have available to working on like work-related projects. Also, buying my wife her first car, I know that's going to involve maybe some afternoons traveling around car centers looking for the right car for her. So I need to put that in there because it is a project that we are working on. So if you look at Q4, realistically, I've only got 2 work projects, which is perfect for Q4 because, as I say, the last 2 weeks of the year, I'm not going to be doing any projects. But that means I can also now start moving things off. So for example, the Develop the Company training program, which I want to do, that's actually started off in Q1 2025. It got moved to Q2, then it got moved to Q3, and now it's currently sitting in Q4. And already I'm beginning to think, that's probably not going to get done in Q4, although I might at least get it started and do the outline, and then I can move it off to Q1 and do it in Q1 2026. Now there's a couple of things you can do here. As you can see, what I've done, like mum's trip to Korea, you can see I've put the dates underneath. This is for quick reference. Also, like the Ultimate Productivity Workshop, 12th and 19th of September, again, dates are written in there because it gives me a clear view of the timing, the dates of it. Now you can actually open up these projects too, and you can actually put in all sorts of different things. Now, for those of you who are pretty smart, you may have noticed that there are no checkboxes on this. Now that's a little trick that you can do in Todoist. Now if you open up the project, you'll see, and this one I'm using Ultimate Productivity Workshop, it looks perfectly normal. Now what I've done is I've put an asterisk at the start of the task. If I remove that and I put in just the Ultimate Productivity Workshop, what you will notice is now I get the checkbox. Now I don't want the checkbox in this. These are not tasks. These are just simply a board to tell me what projects I am working on. So all I need to do is just put the asterisk back in and hit spacebar. So it's asterisk, then space. Then I can save it, and now it is not what I call a non-completable task. The great thing about this is I can move these around. I can move it down here. I can move it to Q2. I can move it wherever I want to move it. I can move it up the list if I wish, although I don't really organize the list that way. It's just something that you can do if you prefer, if you want to put them into a chronological order. Now, the other thing is when you open up one of these tasks, you can add comments, you can add subtasks if you wish, although I would suggest avoiding that and just working from your project note. Speaking of which, you can also put in project notes. So the Ultimate Productivity Workshop is a good example. In this particular one, I have quite a comprehensive project note in Evernote. So I can link that project note into the description area of the task. Now that means that what I'm going to end up doing is I can then start putting in all sorts of, I can then have a quick way of getting straight to the project without having to open anything in Todoist. So I can see, that's the project I need to work on. Click, and it will then take me directly to the project note. It's really, really super fast, super efficient, and a great way of just getting the best use out of Todoist. Now, I have done videos on this particular board before. I just felt it was time to update it. And also now that I can link directly into Evernote means that it just makes my life so much easier. So if you want to learn more about managing projects with Todoist and Evernote, this video up here is the one to watch next.